It's an organic veg box scheme, but it's not just that, it's more than that, because it's a community supported agriculture scheme. So it's something that the community actually buy into to support the grower, so that the grower's got a guaranteed fair income right through the year. It gives the grower some security, so you're actually supporting people to grow food locally, rather than you having sort of a guaranteed amount of vegetables in your box every week. It's a share of whatever the harvest is. You're sharing the risk with the grower, really.
It took me a long time to actually take the leap to start up a CSA, because I didn't quite know how it was going to work. The land was a real issue. I didn't really have a place to do it. So I'd say to anyone who is looking to start up a CSA, as good a piece of land as you can get. It doesn't have to be brilliant land. You can produce good food out of what's sort of termed marginal land, but ideally close to a reasonable sized population, and do some kind of market research, just see, who's living there. Are there a group of people who are interested in having local food and getting involved in a CSA? Can you sort of promote that concept and get a bit of feedback from people and get support straight away? When I was 21, I went and worked on a Camp Hill community in Southern Ireland that was about sort of looking after people with learning disabilities on a land base, and we were growing on a smallish scale. We were growing on a couple of acres, but we were growing for a community of 20 people, and then we were supplying a restaurant and selling a few bits and pieces. Just by chance I ended up in that place. They needed someone in the garden, so I said I'd do that, and I just fell in love with that side of it. I think I really enjoyed the mixture of people and agriculture, because after that I decided to move on to get more of an agricultural training, and I went to work on a large farm in the Alps, in the French Alps, and I pretty quickly realised that just driving up and down fields all day producing food that goes to an anonymous market really didn't do it for me. Find some land, a reasonable population, just be sure that there is interest and support for a CSA, and then find a few key people who can just help you to get things up and running. We got together a small group of us, 4 of us as directors in 2014. We had the land, we had a group of people who were interested in being part of a CSA. We spent most of the first 6 months or possibly a year just sort of getting the idea together, looking at how it was all going to work, marketing or testing actually whether there was a market for it, and getting the basic infrastructure in place. In 2015 we started our first lot of crops, and we had our 50 households in the first year, and then in 2016 we'd gone up to like 90 households. And now 2017, coming into 2018, our plan is to be up on 120 households.
I mean, I wasn't familiar with CSA when I bought the land at Webbsfield. I just wanted access to organic produce. I wanted my children to experience how food's grown. We bought the land to set up a small holding, and then as time went on we found out more about the CSA model, and that seemed to lend itself very well to what we wanted to do, which is essentially have experiences on the land of growing food, engage community in how food's produced, and just be better connected to nature.
Jan Flanagan, who started this up, said a nice thing to me when we started. He said, if you want to go fast, go on your own, and if you want to go far, go with lots of other people. And I think in our case, I think we combine the two. I think actually if you have a couple of people who really push things forward, but with in mind that you have a good backing group of people who can come and sort of be advice and support. So actually as we're getting more established, we rely more and more on actually this wider group of people.
My personal experience was of trying to set up a community farm without any knowledge of how to grow anything. So having Tom coming along with all the expertise in horticulture was absolutely essential. My background's in business development. So Ruth's background, she's a chartered accountant, so her expertise, bookkeeping and making sure the finances are in order is hugely beneficial. So yeah, I think it's very helpful to have different strengths within any organisation.
you need some support really to get going, because obviously there's a time lag between preparing the ground and planting your first crops before you can actually start generating income from a membership. So it's probably thinking carefully about how you're going to manage that period, how many people you're going to aim at when you first start, and you know, how you're going to work towards getting that up to enough members and enough production so that you can actually cover your costs on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, give it a go would be the first thing. Yeah, I suppose a good bit of market research, just to know that there are people that want to buy your veg in the first place. Understanding what's out there already. The way it developed seemed very well timed. I had done a lot of market research about what there was in the area before Cae Tan was started. And we knew that there was a big appetite for organic veg. So as a very basis, we knew there was demand for what would be produced. Finding out, you know, whether people will buy what you're going to produce is the first step, and then making sure you've got, you know, enough support and resources to set up and get going.
Tom talked to a lot of people about what he was going to do before he got started, and then once you've got those 40 or 50 members signed up, then a lot of it is word of mouth really. People just hear from other people about, you know, the veg that they're getting, and it spreads that way. And then they can sign up for a trial month. You don't have to join as a full member, you just sign up for a trial month, try the veg for 4 weeks, and if you like it then you can join as a member on an ongoing basis. It is a fantastic thing to be part of, both as an employee and a member. You know, it does so much for the community. It feels like a community. It's a real joyful thing when you go and pick your veg up each week and you're socialising with other people. Walking in the barn with all those boxes of veg, it's like being in a woodland. It gives you that same kind of feel-good feeling when you come to pick up. It's changed the way my family eat. It's changed. I mean, I've always fed my children vegetables, but it's different if you put it on the plate and they're not going to eat it. I say to them, well, Tom and Lizzie grew that, and they think about it in a different way, about not wasting that food that somebody they know has worked hard to produce. Cae Tan started out in 2015, getting the land ready and planting, and we were dependent then completely on grant income to get ourselves set up and running. We started in the summer of 2016 with 50 members. That's bringing in quite a bit of income, but it's not enough to make Cae Tan completely financially sustainable at that stage, so we're still quite dependent on grant income to support what we're doing. We're now up to around 110 households picking up veg every week, and that generates about £4,000 of income coming into Cae Tan every month. So you can begin to see then that that's enough income coming in to be able to support the growers, pay their salaries, buy some equipment, buy the seeds and the plants and everything else that Cae Tan needs to spend money on.
Actually do those three first, because that's just... Myself and Lizzie are both paid through the company for the work we do, and there's some of the directors are paid for different elements of the work they do, and the idea is that we build a structure that's solid enough that actually any of us can be replaced. So if I was to move on in so many years, or Lizzie was to move on, basically we've got a solid structure. There's enough people there know how it's all working. The land is community owned, or actually at least it's not owned by any one particular person within the organisation, so everything can just continue to function.
So it's beginning to really find its feet and become financially sustainable, that was always what we intended Cae Tan to be. It was never meant to be something that, an organisation that was grant dependent. It was always meant to be a financially sustainable business. So it's really good to see that it's beginning to work and it's almost there.
So members subscribe on a weekly basis. I mean, they pay in advance, so there's a large box or a small box. That's their financial input. That income is sufficient to pay for the salaries of the growers. Now that we've gone over 100 households, that covers their salaries. Then the additional income from grants, then that just pays for stuff that's a lot of added value. So the educational stuff, that's paid for by grants. And then sort of on a daily basis, the activity is coordinated by Tom, the main founder of Cae Tan. And on a more of a monthly or interim basis, there's also a board that meet together, a committee if you like, meet together and help Tom with some of the strategic planning, some of the financial decision making, some of the business planning, and also sort of helping with grant applications and that sort of thing.
Tom had quite a lot of knowledge about how a CSA works, and it was his vision really about, how it would work and how many people, a rough idea of how many members we needed to get to make it sustainable. We do budgets every year, and we project forward what our income and expenses are going to be, etc. So we monitor that on a regular basis, and we have board meetings every other month or so where we discuss that and look at figures. So, but it is Tom's sort of background knowledge of CSAs and how they work, because it's something quite new, I think, for Wales when he first started. There are more now, but it is now the biggest CSA in Wales. So we're more being sort of guided by Tom really, rather than following other people, because it's something quite new.
Our rotation has changed as we've been growing. This is our 4th season now, and the first year we started with just a half of this field, so we did a very traditional rotation of roots, heavy feeders, peas and beans, brassicas, pretty much. And then the second year we doubled the area we were growing on within this field, so we had to shuffle everything around to take that into account. And the third year we then took on a new site where we moved all the brassicas, leeks and onions up to. So we've kind of had an evolving rotation, and now we've settled in our 4th year onto 2 sites which looks like they're going to be really long-term sites. We're now designing a rotation sort of through this season and over this winter that will suit sort of long-term fertility building. We've had Ian Tolhurst down and spoken with him about how his rotation works. We've been working with Niels Corfield to look at using a lot of short-term biodiverse annuals to build fertility and build up biodiversity. We've got 2 separate sites, so actually each site will have a different rotation. So until we've sat down this winter and worked out exactly how those rotations will work, we don't know. But the crux of those will be avoiding brassicas, leeks and onions coming onto the same ground within sort of 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. And then as far as possible following every crop with a green manure crop, so we're building fertility, covering ground and keeping a constant biological activity in the soil so we don't leave any ground empty for any particularly long period. We're learning as we go. We spend a lot of time over the winter training with different people and visiting different farms, so we're kind of learning a lot as we go. We keep really good records of actually varieties we've sown, quantities we've sown, where exactly everything's been planted, what's been done to the ground, whether we've grown green manures. So a lot of it's quite experimental, and even the kind of machinery we're starting to use, the power harrow, the rotavator, the flail mower, it's all sort of quite new to us, or burning off weeds with a gas burner before planting. They're all systems that we're gradually working out what works, and we chat to other farmers, we look at what other people are doing, and we're kind of just working it all out as we go and building systems that work for us. One thing starting up was how much to grow and what to grow. I literally just looked at what me and my family would want to eat over a year, and I put that in a spreadsheet and then just multiplied it by 50, and it was just a rough estimate. And then we worked out how many crops we'd need, what bed space that would take, how many seeds we would need. And then since that, we've evolved it each year. In autumn, early winter, we'll do a membership survey, and we'll ask people what crop they liked, what they didn't like, what they want more of, what they want less of. And then we'll go back to our original plan and adapt it accordingly. And then we've done that each year for the first 3 years. So we've got to the point this year where we're much closer to producing the right quantities of different things. We also build in losses, so we'll sow and plant 15-20% more than we think we need, and we can just look for outlets. If we have got excess, we'll look for outlets to sell those on. Lizzie largely now sort of has much more of an idea of what goes in the box each week. It's looking basically at what we've got in the field, what's available. We always aim to put at least 6 different things in the box through the winter. That can become more in the summer, or generally it is more over the summer season. And as far as quantities go, I think over the years, we've just worked out what's a reasonable quantity for a small share, what's a reasonable quantity for a large share. So it's more or less just experience of looking at what other people are providing. And we also now do a cost analysis, which we've done over a year. So we're comparing the value of what we're providing in our box to what you would buy in a supermarket conventionally, organically, or what you would get from another organic box scheme. From the start, we chose to operate all year round. There's different models of CSA. Some of them shut down for a few months when there's scarcity of stuff to put in a box. But we just looked at the extra hassle, basically, of losing all your members and trying to sign them all up again, stopping bank payments, restarting bank payments. And actually, it's such an ordeal that it's much easier just to buy in that produce for us for that short period if we are short. And just keep everyone engaged and keep it as an ongoing supply. That's another thing I would advise with setting up a CSA is when you're starting up, actually get fairly clued up first on how to grow, because it's a huge responsibility to suddenly say that you're going to grow for 50 households or 100 households. And I think that can be a really big stress for someone if they don't actually quite know what they're doing. And it's also possibly quite irresponsible to those houses to say, yeah, pay me to grow your food, and actually I'm not quite sure how to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I'd say get fairly competent at growing before you start. We got different trainees and volunteers who come and get involved. We've got trainees who come from 2 sources at the moment. We have one who comes through a rural development programme funding source, which is for the next 3 years, and we advertise and select a trainee from the UK for that post. And we're also now working with the European Voluntary Scheme, and they provide someone from a European country to come and work here for 7 to 10 months, whichever suits. So that would be our 2 trainee positions that we have at the moment. So Francesca came as a trainee with us in 2017. She was really keen to set something up. She decided she wanted to stay in the Gower Swansea area, and she looked around at various pieces of land, and she settled on the idea of producing salads and greens for local businesses. And it kind of just became apparent while she was discussing where she was going to do that, how she was going to do it, why not just do it as part of us?
What I learned from the traineeship, it is possible. Like, it gave me the confidence to actually just go and do it. Before, I just couldn't see how I would be able to do it. I really wanted to, but especially like working with Tom and all the other people at Cae Tan, like they're so positive and just such a can-do attitude. It really helped to give me the confidence to go and do it.
I had like an informal apprenticeship in my early 20s in Camp Hill in Southern Ireland, and for me that was like the most useful bit of education I've ever had. You know, I'd been through school, I did A-levels, I eventually went back and did a degree at some point as well, but clearly the most valuable training that I ever had was that year or 2 years when I had an apprenticeship in the garden. And so for me, actually, I really wanted to, once I got to this point of setting up a project, wanted to have that opportunity as well. So Lizzie was trained with us the first year, and then she was employed with us the second year, and that was the idea that, you know, we'd generate enough income to employ a second grower. And our 3rd trainee, Francesca, is now setting up the Salads and Greens project as part of Cae Tan.
I was attracted to come here to Cae Tan because the food that you grow with the people that can come and help you grow it. What I'll take from here specifically is the kind of all the different branches of things that are going on with Cae Tan outside of the field. So it's not just about growing the veg, but there's a real focus on sort of community engagement and working with a whole variety of different people around food and where their food comes from. So I think that's something that I'll be quite inspired by when I finish.
I come from Spain, and I wanted to do something practical after my university degree. I came across this project because I was looking for some European voluntary service, some community project that was going on in Europe. Mainly that was my target, so I came across this project and I thought it was great. And actually right now I enjoy more this project than the fact of all the European voluntary thing. And I feel really lucky to be here, and I feel that it's a chance that everybody should take.
Well, it's a great opportunity for me. I've got some experience in horticulture, and from my point of view, projects like Cae Tan, particularly with growing local food, is going to be critical going forward for community resilience and so on, and passing on skills. So you have to have a place where people can come and exchange skills and knowledge. So that's why I see it as being. But also keeps them out of trouble.
Volunteers come from all sorts of places. Some of them find our website, just local people who just find the website and want to come and get involved. A certain amount of them are our members who just come and get involved regularly. There's particularly a core group of our members, I'd say, who have come ever since the first early years and have really stayed involved and have been key to us working. Most of our volunteers come on a Wednesday and Thursday, so it's easier to manage a group of people and know what days we've got volunteers coming. And then they literally just come and get involved in whatever's happening that day. And myself or Lizzie will work with them or set them up with a job. But we also are aware that everyone's coming with different abilities and different needs. It's been a really important part of what we do, is having people involved and people feeling like they're welcome to come and get involved here, no matter of their abilities or whether they can get a lot of work done or not. They're welcome here basically just to get involved. Again, we wouldn't manage to harvest and plant everything we do unless we had the amount of volunteers we do. No one's obliged to volunteer, so in some CSAs you have to do a certain amount of hours as part of your membership, but we decided, we only want people who actually really want to come and work and just get involved. It's their choice. We've been working with schools, again, right since the first year, because we wanted to have that access. I guess we wanted to connect to all the different levels of the community locally, so schools is a really good way to do that. And we came up with the idea of the pizza project, where we sort of growing and preparing various ingredients for the kids to make their own pizzas. So we followed that through the spring season into summer, into autumn, where we finished by harvesting and thrashing and grinding and baking pizzas. So that forms like the core so far of our educational work. But on top of that, we're doing other bits and pieces. We sometimes have college groups who will come to do accredited training.
Cae Tan has always been an organisation that's kind of been very open to working with other organisations, and I think that gives it a lot of strength. So when we were setting up, we were obviously not providing as much veg as we wanted to, so we were buying in extra veg for our members, and that added a lot of value. As time went on, we heard about other local producers trying to get to market with various different things, so we've allowed them to essentially sell their produce to our members, and I think that's helped build our offer, and then it's also helped create more food resilience, because those other organisations have benefited from accessing our membership. We're very lucky to be based near the Gower Heritage Centre, and it's a great hub of activity. So there's everything from music to produce being sold there And it's great that Cae Tan can sell its produce from there because it's a known entity essentially. So we came and we've got a place to base ourselves, to store produce when it's not being sold. It also works in way, it adds a lot of value to them having someone growing veg locally, restoring those heritage links to how land was worked in the past. There are various different organisations that provide Cae Tan with support. So social farms is one of those. They've provided funding. They've provided advice in different shapes and sizes. There's the Community Land Advisory Service that's provided advice to Cae Tan. It is a two-way thing, so it's not just sort of these organisations providing Cae Tan with what it needs, but it's also sort of those organisations holding Cae Tan up to other people and other organisations, saying, this is what you can achieve. So we're held up as a good practice example, particularly in Wales where there are very few CSAs, and we've sort of very suddenly become the biggest CSA in Wales. We definitely need more community supported agriculture schemes because we've got massive ecological problems and we've got big economic problems, and community supported agriculture is a model that actually addresses those issues. So you're producing food, we've got food security issues, we're importing all our food from elsewhere, and we've also got economic challenges ahead. CSAs create jobs locally. Money gets circulated locally, it doesn't leave the area. It also addresses ecological problems. So small-scale farms, they manage the land in a very diverse way, which is good for nature. So you get a lot of biodiversity. It's good for pollinators, particularly if those CSAs aren't using intensive methods. They're not using pesticides and not using artificial fertilizers. So CSA is a solution to quite a few different problems that exist.
What attracts me to growing and being involved in growing is working with the natural elements of the seasons and learning from how the plants grow and working in a way that's suiting them much more so than trying to produce something, an end product, and looking at the quickest, most profitable way to get there. It's much more about how people are involved, how the plants benefit from the system, how we can all benefit from a natural system.
Descending in the water, in the breaking of the mother, daughter, father, son, and lines of genes that rip and grease and keep things clean. In the teeth and in the tether, in the backwoods beating where the